All right, hello everyone. So moving on, today we're going to talk about Chapter 11, Interaction Between Microbes and Humans. A relatively short chapter that's going to focus on the relationship here between bacteria and other microbes and our bodies here. Not so much controlling of them, but other types of interactions. All right, so one of the things we're going to look at here are what we call symbiotic relationships. A symbiotic relationship is where two or more species, or potentially organisms, but mostly two or more species, live closely together. Now, notice I didn't say live closely together for benefits. Just two or more species that live closely together. There are varieties of symbiosis, symbiotic relationships. First, we have mutualism. This is indeed where both species benefit from the relationship. So examples might be this clownfish and its anemone. These are, the green here is good bacteria, normal microbiota, bacteria in the small intestine. These white birds are called oxtail birds. They sort of hitch a ride on the back of hippos or rhinos or these water buffaloes, and they're picking off parasites, leeches, ticks, things like that. So the bird gets something to live, and of course the water buffalo here gets parasites removed. Commensalism is the second type of symbiotic relationship. This is where one species benefits and the other one is totally unaffected, not positive or negative. So these barnacles on this whale they're not hurting the whale, they just live there. So they get a place to live and some energy and nutrients from the whale. Studies have shown that they don't negatively affect the whale. The whale gets nothing from this, but the barnacles do. These white birds are called cattle egrets, and they fly above large herds of cattle. And as the herd moves on, their hooves kick up dirt, which exposes grubs and worms and insects. So as the herd moves on, the flock of birds flies down and feasts on those grubs and worms that the herd kicks up. No benefit to the cattle, but plenty of benefit to the cattle egrets. And then lastly, we have parasitism, where one species benefits and the other is harmed. So it's a host versus parasite relationship. The parasite gets energy, nutrients, and a place to live from the host, and the host is always somewhat harmed in that process. There are endoparasites, which live inside the host, like, say, a tapeworm, and ectoparasites, which live on the outside, like, say, a tick or lice. Now, an important point about parasitism is parasites do not kill their host quickly. Think about it. If a parasite killed their host, they're losing what they need to survive. So the idea is to weaken the host, but not kill it. So examples of parasites is a tick burrowing in. These little flagellated protozoans are swimming around red blood cells. And look at some more here. All right. Parasites can help keep population numbers in check, as can disease. So this chart summarizes what I just talked about. I also like about it, it shows examples, microbial examples. So mutualism, bacteria in the colon and the gut. Commensalism, staph epidermidis on your skin. A parasite would be tuberculosis bacteria in the lungs. All right, here's a neat example of three-way symbiosis, and more specifically, three-way mutualism. It says wood-eating termites, pictured here, cannot digest cellulose in the wood, but the protozoan trichonympha, which lives in their intestines, can digest cellulose, but with the aid of bacteria that lives in the protozoan. So the three organisms, termite, protozoan, and bacteria, maintain a mutually beneficial relationship that's essential for the lives of all three. All right, so a great example of symbiosis, primarily mutualism and commensalism, is our normal microbiota. Now, I've talked about the normal microbiota or microbiome in numerous chapters, previous chapters than this, but we're going to look more specifically at it now. First, some reminders. Your normal microbiota, normal flora or microbiome, whatever you want to call it, is a great example of symbiosis within and even on the human body. Again, not so much parasitism, but mutualism and commensalism. So, again, your normal microbiota are microorganisms that colonize the body without normally causing disease. Bacteria, archaea, protists, fungi, and viruses can all be part of your normal microbiome. Just the viruses are referred to as your virome. Okay? Now, you have resident microbiota, which are permanent, lifelong members of your microbiota. And I'll talk about momentarily how you get them. And then there are transient microbiota, which are non-permanent residents. You just pick them up, they're with you for a while, kind of just passing through. They might attempt to set up a permanent colony and become a resident, but they're unable to remain as part of your microbiome for long periods of time. They might be outcompeted by the residents, they might be destroyed by your immune system, there might be changes in your body that discourages their growth, or a combination of these. Knowledge of the microbiome has grown tremendously over the last decade or so due to genetic analysis. And it turns out that your microbiome is far more complex and far more critical to health than anyone suspected. We have about 3 times more bacterial cells in and on our bodies than normal human cells. How is that possible? Well, recall how much smaller there are. This big pink thing in the background here is a human cheek cell. There's the nucleus. All the little purple things you see are bacteria. They're much smaller. And you consider that each bacterial cell has about 5,000 genes, so you have many times more bacterial genes than human genes. Right now, you have about 150 different species of bacteria on each of your hands, and they're different on your left versus your right hand. We don't know why. And women have a greater variety than men. We don't know why. Now, of importance, the microbiome is not uniformly distributed throughout the body. There are parts of the body that have a lot of normal microbes, some that have a few, and some that should have none. So let's start here. Parts of the body with a lot of microbiota. The big one, everyone, is your intestines, especially your large intestine, your colon. Okay? This is where the vast majority of your normal microbiota reside, in the gut. Okay? In fact, the number of normal microbiota drop by about 1/3 every time you poop, a single defecation. And there's between 500 and 1,000 species there. So that has a lot of normal microbiota. So does your skin, particularly Staphylococcus epidermidis, which is a commensal, not mutually beneficial, hundreds of other species that can vary by location and time. And lastly, your oral and nasal cavities have abundant normal microbiota. Staphylococcus aureus being a potential example that could eventually lead to problems, but it's there. Now, what about parts of the body with moderate, just sort of an intermediate amount of microbiota? This would include the genital and urinary tracts, your stomach, and your eyes. Okay, that's moderate amounts of normal microbiota. And then importantly, especially from a medical clinical perspective, what about parts of the body that are free of normal microbiota? Now, many parts of your body should never have bacteria in them, never have microbes in them. This includes your blood, most of your organs, like the heart, lungs, and brain, and body cavities and the lining around your organs. So organs, linings around the organs, body cavities, your blood, and organs should be free of bacteria. If there's bacteria or other microbes there, that's a problem. That's an indicator that something's wrong. All right? So we can see here parts of the mouth, okay? Respiratory system, we're going to have some, okay? Again, eyes, and so on. This is a nice table here. Representative members of the normal microbiota by body region. So we look at the different parts of the body, some of the species that are there, that's column 2, and a few comments. Okay? So you can see it's quite variable. I showed you this before, but one more time. Here's a representative diagram of the salivary microbiome. Now remember, this is just in your saliva. So you have potentially, everyone, all these species that you see here. Look at how many different species are there. And remember, the size of the font indicates how abundant they are. Some are unknown. Okay? So it's pretty interesting, the mix that we have here. Now, how do we get our microbiome? So we'll say acquisition of the microbiome. Now, we're going to start with a sterile environment in utero. So when you were an embryo and a fetus inside mom, that should be pretty sterile, okay, before birth, because any microbes and so forth are typically filtered out through the placenta. Now, as we'll see in an upcoming chapter, some can get through, but that should be a pretty sterile environment. Now, if we have a vaginal birth, the baby is going to pick up about 100 different species of bacteria from mom's birth canal, from the vagina as it leaves mom, okay, as the baby leaves mom. Now, of importance, especially this species, lactobacillus, is picked up during a vaginal birth. Okay, so there's about 100 species. Now, more microbes are acquired from contact with the environment after the baby is born. So by about 6 months, that individual has about 700 species, and by age 3, it has a complex microbiome. Very unique, okay? Every individual has their own unique microbiome. Now, interestingly, C-section babies have different microbiomes than babies born vaginally. Particularly, they don't pick up lactobacillus, as I'll show you on the next slide. This difference could last for up to 3 years or more, at least 3 years. We don't know yet all the consequences of that difference. It could lead to later health issues or not. This is an ongoing area of research. Ultimately, every individual, every one of us has our own unique microbiome. It's like a fingerprint. And interestingly, your microbes are intricately linked to evolution in most species because as we as a species evolved, our microbes had to evolve with us. And it's very, 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 very interesting. So here we see acquisition of the microbiome. So inside mom here, okay, there might be some maternal factors, maybe some gut microbiota if there's an infection here or periodontitis. Okay, but mostly that's a sterile environment. Now, If we have a vaginal birth, a big species that's picked up is lactobacillus. In a C-section, it's these two species, Staphylococcus and Proprianibacterium. Now, after the baby's born, so less than a year old, it's going to pick up more microbes in milk, particularly breast milk, and then from solid food consumption, but also from the environment. Look at these things, you know. It might get antibiotics. It might get, there might be genetics involved here. It could pick up things from the environment. Okay, by age 3, an individual has an adult-like microbiota. Unique. Okay? And everybody has their own unique microbiome. This is a really cool graph here. The HVs here mean healthy volunteers. So what we're looking at here, everyone, is 4 different areas of the body. Okay? This refers to the inside elbow joint here. The back, inside the nose, and on the heel of your foot. Now, it's healthy volunteer 1, 2, 3, or 4. And the different colors line up to the key here. These are different bacteria or fungi or other microbes that are part of their normal microbiome. Now, these exact percentages don't matter, everyone, but I want you to look at the mix of colors. Look here just on the back, for example. None of these bars are the same. All of these people have a unique combination and a unique diversity of microbiome, of bacteria and other microbes here. That's pretty neat. All right? Now, what does this mean for health, or looking at kind of a clinical perspective? What about microbiome imbalances? Now, imbalances in the microbiome have been linked to things like Crohn's disease, allergies, diabetes, obesity, asthma, and others. All right? It's not really how many microbes you have, it's the diversity that's key. So microbiomes are actually being used as what they call designer antibiotics. You may have heard of fecal transplants, and yes, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's officially called a fecal microbiota transplant, or FMT. All right, example. A woman with a life-threatening Clostridium infection had lost 60 pounds in 6 months. No antibiotics were working. Okay? This was years ago now when they were first looking at the microbiome. A small amount of her husband's stool was mixed with saline and injected into her colon. The issue they noticed she was having is because of all the diarrhea she had basically no normal microbiota. It was all flushed out. So they replaced her microbiome with his. Guess what? She was cured. The symptoms disappeared and did not reoccur. So how a fecal transplant works, it's showing you it here. It can be injected or taken in a series of pill forms. All right? Now, how successful is this? Again, the secret to keeping yourself healthy might just be keeping your quote-unquote germs, they should be called good bacteria, healthy. And again, it's not numbers that matter, it's microbial diversity. So you see here, it's no joke. Clostridium difficile, or C. diff, causes debilitating diarrhea. It's linked to 14,000 deaths in the U.S. every year. So they tried this fecal transplant here in Boston, and you had 20 patients. Okay? In the initial treatment, symptoms resolved in 14 out of the 20. Through a fecal transplant. They tried it again on these remaining 6, and it cleared up in 4 of them. That's a 90% success rate, people. You would take that as a scientist any day. Okay? That's pretty neat. So why is it so important to have a normal microbiome? Let's look at beneficial actions of the human microbiome. Now, we talked about this in the last chapter, but microbial antagonism. A normal population of microbes can offset, they can keep in check, invading pathogens or pathogens that are normally present as part of your normal microbes. The normal microbiota compete with present or invading pathogens. This competition slows down the growth of the pathogen and can even neutralize it. It's like you see here. Here's the probiotics, the good bacteria. Chomp, chomp, chomp. They're eating up all the resources. And the bad bacteria, the pathogens, say, hey, they're eating us out of house and home. So that competition, at a minimum, slows it down and can neutralize them. It keeps them in check, especially pathogens that might normally be present. Again, microbiome diversity is the key. It's not what you have or how much of it you have, but a proper balance of different species that's critical. So, taking an antibiotic or other drug, even if it's not directed towards your normal microbiota, which it most likely isn't, is going to create long-lasting changes in your microbiome. Because that antibiotic, if it's broad spectrum, is like a nuclear bomb going off. It's going to kill all the stuff. It's going to take care, sure, of your pathogen, but it's also going to have this ripple effect and destroy a lot of your normal microbiota. When that happens, you reduce or eliminate this antagonism, this competition. Okay? So if I don't have that competition, these pathogens over here, these invaders, or remember, they might already be there as part of your normal flora, but kept in check, they now have free rein to really start using resources, and their population can grow and grow and grow and start to cause problems. We talked about this in the last chapter. That's called a superinfection, but imbalances can cause digestive problems and other health issues. So microbial antagonism is a real big benefit of having a normal population of these good bacteria. But there are other things they do. They also provide us with useful vitamins like vitamin K and the B vitamins. Why? Because vitamin K and B vitamins are just secondary metabolites for bacteria. They're something that's made along a pathway that the bacteria don't need, so they get rid of it, and we can use it. Your normal microbiota can also help modulate your immune system, especially when you're very young, like after birth and so on. What this means is they help adjust your immune system to a desired level, helping to teach the immune system what and what not to target. So it can involve stimulation or inhibiting the immune system. That's, again, especially important early on in life. They can also help the body to ferment and then absorb carbohydrates. And then there are many others, and undoubtedly other benefits that we don't know. Now, everyone, here's another video here. This is a relatively short video. And listen, it's a cute little video. It's mostly cartoons. But it's a cute little video about the microbiome. You can see it's made here National Public Radio. So please watch that to give you a little bit more information about the microbiome. So let me finish up then with how can we encourage growth of microorganisms in the body and keep a healthy microbiome. Have you heard of probiotics? Probably. Probiotics are good bacteria that we eat in our food, or you can take them from pills. And they have a lot of health benefits, almost certainly. Examples: lactobacillus, bifidobacteria, streptococcus. These species and others are good bacteria that you can add to your microbiome. Now, you will find these in foods that are labeled live cultures or active cultures, or it might say live and active cultures, like these. Sauerkraut, yogurt, here's a kefir, probiotic. Okay, that's bacteria in there. But you can also eat prebiotics. Prebiotics are food for your good bacteria. It's like you're feeding the ones that are already there. Here are some examples of prebiotics, foods that the good bacteria like. Of importance is inulin. Inulin is a storage carbohydrate in many plant species. So where are you going to find inulin and other prebiotics? Non-digestible fiber compounds, bananas, artichokes, asparagus, onions, leeks. Onions, that's one I'm staying away from, but they have this benefit. Leeks, garlic, cooked whole wheat flour, almonds, and some other nuts, some of the things we see here. So by taking probiotics and prebiotics, we can help foster a healthy microbiome and encourage that within our own bodies. And that's very, very healthy. Okay, everyone, that does it for this chapter on interaction between microbes and humans. Our next chapter is going to be a real crucial one where we're going to talk about infectious disease. So until then, have a nice rest of the day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.